Well, it's a big day here on the Pete Sousa Show. And not only is it election day, but it is also Baylor basketball reaction day. Game last night, a highly touted game that was out in Washington State. I guess in Olympia. Let's bring in our Baylor expert, Cam Stewart, host of Locked On Baylor.
Spokane, by the way.
It was in Spokane.
Yeah.
So it was basically
Yes. Yeah, it's less than a mile from the campus.
All right, do we have to start over, Mike? We're good? Okay. I just want to make sure. We don't have any audio issues. So, Cam, 101-63.
Happy Erection Day.
101-63 is the final score.
Yeah.
Like, I woke up. I went to bed right after Monday Night Football. I DVR'd. I was going to watch it. I watched the first 25 minutes this morning. I will watch the rest because I'll end up doing some Baylor hoops later. But as for right now, was it as bad as the score indicates?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. And the sad part is it wasn't so much a talent differential so much as it was effort. Like Gonzaga just put out a winning effort the whole time. And Gonzaga's a really good team. I think Baylor's going to be a really good team too. But there's parts of it, which I'm sure you might have even already seen in the little bit that you've watched, is like part of it is Gonzaga is returning 80% of their scoring from last year. You know, they bring a lot of guys back, and Baylor is replacing 4 or 5 starters. Again, a lot of new guys on this team, and the first 2 or 3 guys off the bench are also new because Langston Love didn't play. So there was some of that, and you'll see it, especially with their communication on defense, but most of it was an effort thing, which was disappointing.
Let's take a detour real quick. You mentioned Langston Love. Towards the end of last season, I was doing a game at West Virginia, and it was like, okay, he's going to come back from the ankle. It was every game. It was like, he's going to come back. He's a game time decision, right? Played sparingly for the rest of the year. And truly for me, hearing at the beginning of the broadcast, like Langston Love is still dealing with that same issue, correct?
Yep.
What does his future hold as far as his availability, being able to play? What have you heard?
We just got cleared, like fully cleared, only like 2 weeks ago. So, and
forgive me, did he have a surgery over the summer?
Yeah.
He
did.
Did.
So we had a surgery on that ankle.
Okay.
Scott had said he's not really going to fully ramp up to where he needs to be until conference schedule, which is 2 months away, or a month and a half, I guess, the end of December this year. But what kind of gets bothersome is that Scott said on Friday, everyone's available. And then Langston Love's not available, which is that was that cat and mouse song and dance we went through last year. Like you were talking about every game. Well, is he going to be available to play? And he's had a couple different injuries. And it reminded me of 2022, the year after they won the national championship, when LJ Cryer got a foot injury in January, and he was day to day until the season ended in the middle of March. And never. It was
funny because you and I had talked about that last year. You know, is this going to be another LJ Cryer? And I said, no. Like it seemed like he was ready to go in Morgantown, and then it was that same number for the rest of the year.
Yeah, and again, that's not necessarily on the player, right?
No,
I mean,
sure.
Right? Like, and Langston, that was 2 or 3 separate injuries last year, which was real unfortunate. It's just like. I, as a fan, outside of being an analyst too, it's like I had to not even put Langston in the equation at the end of last year.
Okay.
If you get him, that's great. That's gravy. But after what we did every freaking game for LJ Cryer in 2022, it's like you can only go with the guys that aren't questionable, like, you know. And I was surprised when Scott said on Friday that, yep, everyone's available and ready to go. I didn't think Langston was going to be available, and he wasn't. And I think that's okay to slow roll this thing, because when he gets out there, and if he's close to 100%, which is, again, an if coming off of surgery, he is one of the most valuable players in the country, because he's a guy who can give you double figures off the bench, can score inside and out, and play good enough defense, and is very switchable as a defensive coach. So, that is,
I think it really helps too with this team with all the turnover to have your leaders available and in action, whether that's working. I'm not saying he's not, but like I know that a guy like that being on the floor, that goes great lengths. Okay, we're gonna play a little game, right? Because I know you did watch the whole game. You went on Locked On Baylor last night. people can still grab that pod and that
Yeah,
YouTube
baby.
video and check it out. It's really, especially, honestly, you're a dream because on a morning like today, when the game was literally, I mean, if you're a Baylor grad on the East Coast, that started at like midnight.
Yeah.
So, you probably didn't have a chance to watch it. And there's so many new pieces. These are opportunities for Baylor fans and people all over college basketball to become familiarized with these players. I want to go through each player.
Okay.
At least the starters and one deep.
Can I bitch about one thing first? This is
sure.
very quick.
Yeah.
Because you were talking about what time it tipped off. And yeah, it ended up becoming about 10:40 Central Time. And I'm on ESPN2, which is where it's supposed to be. And I am literally, Pete, being forced to watch the Monday Night Football postgame show.
Yeah.
Like the game is over. The game is done. They don't have any obligations to us to really show us the postgame show.
Yeah.
Apparently that's not the case because Baylor and Gonzaga is tipped off. I'm like, wait a minute. What is going on here?
Was the postgame show Van Pelt?
Yes.
Okay.
They moved the Baylor game to ESPNU so that they could put on ESPN2 the same postgame show they had on ESPN. It was like, what are we doing here? What are we doing?
So
I don't know.
I watched.
I get the NFL's a monster.
Yeah.
Trust me. That's not lost on me, but it's like you already have it on your bigger network. And here you've got a top 10 matchup that you've promised us, and you're going to move that to ESPNU. Thankfully, I do have ESPNU, but Pete, not everyone has that. You can have ESPN and ESPN2 and not have ESPNU. That's a realistic thing. Anyway.
By the way, that football game was awesome. And you know what I appreciated being like a Big 12 guy is that for overtime, just Baker and Mahomes were out there.
Oh, man.
Did you see that?
Yeah. Do you remember that game, 2016?
Yes.
Oh,
and
that is a formative Big 12 memory.
So there they were again last night
what a freaking
for the coin toss. And you could tell like there was respect, but there was like tension. It was like, I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. This is a cool little rivalry.
And it's funny too that like
these guys don't like each other on the field at all. That's the feeling I got.
And it's funny that like Tech was like, oh my God, like we pulled a Tech thing again. Baker had walked on at Tech and they basically picked Davis Webb over him. Yeah. And so he went to OU and he wins the Heisman, goes to playoff, obviously has a great career at Oklahoma. And so for that time, Tech fans are like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, how did we fumble this? Oh, it's so classic Tech. And everyone's laughing at him. And what they actually got was one of the best NFL quarterbacks in history out of it. So he didn't win anything at Tech, but at least you can be like, but he went here. You can keep your Baker. We've got Pat Mahomes.
They're dining out on that, dude.
Yeah.
Like
they will suck on that nipple,
Chiefs
man.
Games, there's Texas Tech advertisements. Like on the ribbon at Chiefs games, that's obviously Mahomes related.
Oh, yeah. And like vice versa in terms of like you watch any Tech game, there's going to be a red Mahomes jersey in there.
Yeah.
Any game. Any red Chiefs Mahomes jersey. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's get back to the game. No, I was happy. It
was necessary.
Yeah. All right. Newcomers and changes. Let's start at the top with somebody who you've talked about a little bit already. Norshad Omer, 15 points, 9 rebounds in 30 minutes. Give me a grade.
Oh, last night?
Yep.
B-.
B-.
Which is maybe the best grade I'll give out. He had some moments where he had some miscommunication stuff, but I thought he had some real good one-on-one defending. He was rebounding the heck out of it. He is not a polished finisher necessarily, which we kind of knew coming in. He's a good like offensive rebound putback guy. That's how he gets a lot of his points. But what I saw from him last night is someone who's capable of playing the 5, which is what I was concerned about. A guy at 6'8" or so, but a grittiness, a toughness that everyone talks about that he could play center. I think I saw enough to say he can play center, which is going to be big for Baylor. But overall, not a great game, but I saw some flashes from him that I really liked.
All right. How about Josh Ojamwuna? 10 points, 6 rebounds. He's going to be thrust into more of a role. He's going to have to contribute, this season, more so than he did last year.
Let's just say it's pretty important that Norchad can play the 5 a little bit too. I don't think Josh had a great game.
What does he need to improve on?
I don't think he moves laterally very well, and I think he is a sneaky good athlete, so I'm wondering why that hasn't kind of come to fruition. He has not been a good enough rebounder in his time, which was the same problem Flo Thamba had. And when when Baylor was playing great man-to-man defense in 21 and 22, Flo was a good one-on-one defender against the other team's big man. And when they couldn't do that, and there was kind of more on Flo's plate, it became a disaster. And I fear that could happen with Josh O as well. I'm taking all of this with a grain of salt being game one, but I expected a Josh O leap last year that I don't think we really got. And he's certainly going to need it this year because they're thin at that position. He is the tallest guy on the team, and he's talked about kind of a personal like vengeance here. He needs to have a good year. And I don't think we saw that. He got out rebounded by VJ Edgecombe last night, guard.
Yeah.
So I don't think he did enough on the defensive end. And again, Pete, you've seen the athleticism. Like he's not Jonathan Chanwa-Chachua in that department, but he should be able to give you some of that rim running a little bit. We really only saw one play in that game, which was in the first half of like a pick and roll lob to Josh O. Like he needs to do a little bit. He needs to do some more of that.
Okay. VJ Edgecombe, you just mentioned him. Let's get to more guards than Buckingham Palace, right?
Yes.
As Fran Fraschilla likes to say. I got 4 guards who I really want to talk about.
By the way, Rothstein said Miami more guards than Shawshank. And I said, well, I've seen the film. I think the problem there is that the guards did not stop a prison break from happening. So maybe
there's some other problems.
Miami did not have a
bad
team. Did not have a good team last year. Anyway, guards, let's do it.
VJ Edgecombe. Just 4 points, 7 assists.
Yeah.
7 rebounds, 1 assist. By the way, Rob Wright, 6 assists. Everybody else pretty much pedestrian. Distributing the basketball.
Yep. And VJ looked like his first college game.
I'm looking at 11 team assists, Cam. That's bad. Yeah. Okay. So VJ, go ahead.
Just looked like his first college game. Very passive. Not really getting involved much in the offense. I expect big things from VJ. I'm hoping this was just a little blip on it, because this goes into Rob Wright, who did have a good game, had some real nice finishes, man, and distributed the ball well. Defensively, it's a work in progress, as most freshmen are. But I don't often look at high school competition because I think it's moot once you get to college, especially in the Big 12. It's such a big difference. But VJ did not play the highest level necessarily of the prep circuit. Played for a pretty good prep team in Lehigh. Rob Wright did play at the highest level. He played for Montverde. He played with Cooper Flagg. You know, he played with guys who were going to play, playing with and against guys who were going to play in the NBA. And he looked like he was kind of ready to get out there and ready for this moment and whatever his role was. VJ just looked a little bit passive in this game. Fran is really high on Rob Wright, saying that he'll stay 2 years and that next year, at worst, he'll just be all Big 12, but he expects him to be an All-American. And you saw flashes of that, man. I mean, the kid is not big, not NBA big at 6'1", but certainly really crafty and had some good finishes around the basket. So I loved what he gave you. And I obviously think VJ is going to come around. I think he's going to be a good defender, which we've heard from some people, and can jump through the gym, has the highlight of the night. As long as you don't show the score bug, he has this like baptism dunk over Mark Few's son. That was hopefully something that he'll do in the middle of games when they're still in it.
What about early on in the game? This is part of what I saw. Jay Williams calls out Jaden Nunn because
which I called out in my living room beforehand.
So we agreed Jay Williams did a great job last night, by the way. But so Jay calls out Jaden Nunn, and it's basically because guys are outside on the perimeter just able to throw these great passes because there's nobody guarding them. There's nobody up in them. And
I was screaming.
Yeah, so Jaden Nunn's defense, that's who the guy is, a defensive stopper, at least on that play. What wasn't there? Was that indicative of his performance all night?
Yeah. I mean, he had some moments on defense later on in the game. He got a couple steals, but I'm like screaming. I'm like, get in his freaking shirt, man. Yeah. Like, stop giving him. It's like a pass rusher who does not try to collapse the pocket. It's like you're giving him this time and this space. And Gonzaga, every year, they're the best team without the ball. They're so great at cutting without the ball and motion and hunting mismatches, which is what they did all night. And part of the reason why they were able to hunt mismatches on these switches is because there's not enough ball pressure. And it was that way from all Baylor guards, but especially, you expect more from Jaden Nunn. And I gave Nunn a bit of a pass last year. I thought he still had a good year defensively, but I was like, you know what? There's a lot of deficiencies on the defensive end that it's tough for Jaden Nunn to kind of cover all those things up. But when you look at the personnel this year with Roach, Edgecombe, and Rob Wright off the bench, Langston Love will be in there eventually. Like, you've got combo guards. You got guards who are going to score. You got guards who are going to score outside, guards who are going to score inside. Jaden Nunn could do a little bit of all those things, but what I really need from you is to be a dog defensively. Yeah. I need you to go against the best perimeter player night in, night out, and shut him down.
Yeah, and I think that lends itself to the leadership
Mm-hmm.
portion of the whole deal we talked about earlier, and that's why having Langston Love back in uniform is going to be so important. Just guys that are there doing it by example.
And I think part of, by the way, replacing 4 starters is not just like a communication thing necessarily, but also guys finding their roles. And I think that'll be one that Jaden Nunn will figure out.
Well, I will tell you, I think this is a product. This embarrassing loss is a product of the connective tissue that Gonzaga has that Baylor has none of right now.
Yep.
I mean, that's a huge advantage in game, especially in game 1. So it's a little worrisome. Well, here's we're going to talk about one more player, then I'm going to get to something you said. So Jeremy Roach.
Yeah. He play?
9 points, 3 assists, 2 rebounds in 27 minutes. So yeah, he played all right.
I just, with Roach, just needed more command. A guy is a natural point guard. He says, I'm the point guard, and Rob Wright had a better game running secondary point. I just need – Baylor was playing iso ball all night, which is not what they've ever been. They're going from, a John Jacobs offense to whatever the Steve Henson offense is, which was very successful. He was running the offense when OU went to the Final Four with Buddy Hield and those guys, and he coached Trae Young as well. Like, it has high volume 3-point shooting, but it's not iso ball 3-point shooting. It's kind of like the Celtics in that way they're not shooting threes just because we can't get anything inside. There's movement. There's, again, exploiting mismatches on the perimeter. And there was just none of that last night. It was too much iso, too much dribbling, as the Rockland High coach Fred Damon would say all the time. Just too much dribbling.
Yeah. There's
so much of the game that can be simplified down to that. And Jeremy Roach just needs to have more command of what this offense is going to be. That's all, because that's your point guard, and it's a guy who's played a lot of games. So need more of that, because they did not have that. It was a lot of one-on-one. And Baylor, while they have a ton of talent, they're not going to win a lot of games one-on-one. And in the Big 12, you're not going to do that.
Talk to me about the coaching performance that you saw. Scott Drew, I feel like we can't grade him. He's got the guy's ungradable. He's so great. But if we were to grade him, what would you give him?
A D.
A D?
Yeah, I mean, this was – look, I know there's that connective tissue we talk about, but giving up 50 points and a half cannot be acceptable. It can't be. I know you're on the road. I know it's a top 10 team. 50 points can't be acceptable and a half. They did that twice. Gave up 49 in the first half, and I was like, okay, it can't get much worse than that. And it did. They gave up 52 in the second half. And the effort thing, like, a lot of that is on a coaching staff. I was thinking there was going to be some point in the game that Scott was going to call a timeout and just say, hey, guys, forget the scoreboard. Show me some pride here. Like, show me some heart. Show me some care factor, like Dave Aranda likes to talk about, and ignore the scoreboard. And I think they did that for about 3 minutes. It was a 25-point Gonzaga lead. They got down to 13. They had a little 16-4 run. And in a blink, in the next media timeout, it's 27. It's the largest lead of the night. Like, Gonzaga got, Baylor landed one punch, one good jab on them, and Gonzaga said, drew some blood and said, oh shit, and just started nailing him back. And I think part of that's on coaches of not having guys ready to play. Of course, Scott Drew is a Hall of Famer and a great coach. He's going to have these guys ready, but this was not a good performance by anyone in this game. Anyone.
Well, you mentioned,
and I'm sure he would say that.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking for his post game, but I can't find it. You
they
mentioned
had a flight to catch.
What'd you say?
They had a flight to catch.
You mentioned effort. What level of effort do you feel like from a 1 to 10 was exhibited team wide last night?
4,
A 4.
4 or 5. And contrast it to Gonzaga. Gonzaga was a 10.
Yeah.
If we're being fair, Gonzaga, and that's not an excuse for Baylor, but Gonzaga played hard all night long, like from the tip. They just played harder than Baylor did. It was perplexing. Yeah, 4 or 5 for Baylor. And on Saturday, they're going to take on Arkansas, 2 top 20 games to top 20 opponents to start the season. They're going to put out a much better effort on Saturday.
Well, we saw A&M lose, and UCF is a tough place to play. That's a Big 12 school.
Baylor's 1-0 there.
Baylor is 1-0 there. They are, yes.
Johnny.
Kansas is 0-1. So.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
All right. So I guess the last thing I have for you is, going forward, what's a bright spot that this team can build on going into that game? Because this Arkansas game is like one of those neutral site home games pretty much, because it's in American Airlines in Dallas.
A lot of hogs there.
Yeah. I was hoping that I was going to get to call the game, but John Schriffen is, hey. I'm
going to buy tickets. You want to
go? No. But my boy Schriff got hooked up. Maybe I will go. It depends. That could be an idea, Cam.
Tickets aren't too cheap. Well, me and one of my buddies from college are going to go.
No, would you ever think about getting? Oh, that's a question I have for you. Would you ever think about getting credentials so you're locked on?
Oh yeah, I could have got credentials for this game.
Yeah,
I want to go as a fan.
Okay.
Yeah. Hope going forward.
You hope going forward. What can they build on? And then one last question.
Yeah, I think the hope is still there. Like, this game's not a complete wash, but it's game one with an almost entirely new lineup. For all intents and purposes, a completely new lineup. And you're facing a team with a ton of experience. It's a true road game, even though it's not played on their campus. It was played a half mile away, which you knew coming in. That's not an excuse, but there's only so much that I can really take from this game. The effort is what disappointed me, but in terms of the basketball stuff, they've got that figured out. I think this team, or they're going to have it figured out. Like, I think this team has a lot of talent. I think they've got a great coach. I think they are a top 10 team. So it's the worst loss ever by a top 10 team in the season opener, but I think it's all ahead of them. This is not even close to the finished product of this team.
Okay, let's talk.
You know how they say, like, your broadcast, your first one's your worst one?
Yeah.
Like, that could be the case for Baylor with this loss. And it should be. They shouldn't lose any game by more than 30.
And maybe if you're Scott Drew, you kind of learn a lesson. Like, maybe we should stay away from these games so early with so many.
That's an interesting point, Pete, because the last couple of years they've done neutral site games that have not been neutral site, and Baylor fans bitch about it. I personally don't care. I think, it's good to get in a road environment because the Big 12 has some of the best road environments in all of college basketball. So if you're going to be a top 10 team and playing in the Big 12, you can't be like, oh, well, it was a road game.
Yeah.
That's not what we're aiming for.
Yeah.
But what I am worried about is, like, this is third straight year they have done one of these, and they have just flat out gotten their ass kicked. Just not even close. They've been
Marquette, Michigan State, now this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Marquette, Milwaukee, Michigan State, and Detroit, and then this. And it's like each of them have been like by 25 points or more. Like, actually, like, flat out getting their ass kicked. And each of those first 2 times they lost in the second round in the tournament. So I'm like, and they didn't win the Big 12. So it's like, how much is this really preparing for you? It is my question for that. But, like, I don't mind. Don't shy away. They're going to have another one. They're going to go up to Stores and play UConn in a couple of weeks. Actually about a month. But I'm not saying shy away from it, but it's like, how many times do we need to get our ass kicked before it becomes a lesson, to get it? How many times do we need to get our ass kicked before it's a kick in the ass?
So, all right, last one for you. This doesn't matter, but I'm curious. Baylor Nation, give me a pulse. Last night, what kind of feedback were you getting online? People tweeting at you, people responding to Cam tweets, the comments on the Locked On. What do we got?
Mostly fine. There are some people who were kind of over the edge, but mostly
Can you
fine.
Give me an example of over the edge?
Oh, I'd have to look back in the live comments.
Okay.
But,
all right.
I mean, yeah, some people that were like, Norchad can't even play on this team, and like, how is VJ going to be a top 5 pick with 4 points? And like, there was some of that. And a lot of people talking about what we just talked about in terms of like, how many times you're going to get boat raced. in one of these games before you stop scheduling them.
Yeah.
But I think for the most part, it was, I don't want to say positive, but not completely negative. And there were some people like what we just described of like, obviously they're going to get better. This is not good, but they're going to get better. And then there are some fans, there were a good amount of fans that were like, oh yeah, but it was a road game, which is what I was just talking about. It's like, well, that can't be the excuse. You know, that you're not, if that's the case, then you're not a top 10 team. Then you're not a team with Final Four aspirations, which I think Baylor is. But for the most part, fine. They're not jumping off the ledge. There is such a trust in Scott Drew that it's going to take a lot for that to happen. And there should to some extent, but like there are also some fans that don't find a problem with not making it past the first weekend in the NCAA tournament the last 3 years, which I think is an issue. But yes, he is banked a ton of trust. Actually, you know who made a good point is our pal Drake. Before we get out of this, Drake can be very overreactive.
No.
I don't know if you've noticed that.
Yeah.
But he tweeted about Baylor basketball last night. He said, this is like this effort thing. Like you've got to look at it. Like the players have to look in the mirror. As he said, like from what Scott Drew went through this offseason in terms of getting big fish from the transfer portal, replacing his coaching staff essentially, and turning down Kentucky to come back here with a ton of hype coming into the season. Like it needs to be better than that. And I think that's a good point by Drake. I do think it will be as well. I do think it will be. I'm not jumping off the ledge.
It'll fix itself too. That was the one thing I was going to finish with is that if there was one glaring concern for me, and this is, you know, I got to stand by it because I feel it, but it's kind of an indictment, was the body language was pretty weak.
I'm a big body language guy.
From the very beginning of the game. And you'd like to see, you know, Baylor, I put Baylor and Villanova on the same pedestal, Villanova under Jay Wright and Baylor under Scott Drew. These guys play a brand of basketball that you can be proud of. As a Baylor alum or a Villanova fan, like you can be proud of Baylor's players. Like the effort they exude on the floor, their body language, it's just like, wow, this is an extension of us. This is the front porch of our school. We love that. Last night, I would imagine if you're a Baylor alum, you probably didn't have that sense of pride going. Because look, if they get annihilated, but like the effort's there and they're diving all over the floor, like it's a little different. But that wasn't the case.
No, it was not. It was not the case. But it's my sincere hope that it will be there pretty soon.
Yeah, it'll be there. All right. Cam Stewart. You can catch him tomorrow on the Rogue Media Network, 11 a.m., the Cam Show. And you got to catch him later on today. ESPN 1660 with Matt Mosley, 4 to 6 Central Time.
One today.
What'd you say?
Be an interesting one
today.
I know.
You guys are great together. So keep up the great work. And segment 3 coming up, the Pete Sousa Show, powered by the Rogue Media Network.